plenty of discussion being had right now about defenders. Which ones do we need? Which ones can we go without? And we need to recognise how teams are setting up in order to get our best route to points. So the question, I guess, is, do we really want them? Right, guys, welcome back. This is the Above Average FPL podcast. My name is Adam, and as always, I'm joined by Baker. How you doing, mate?
Very well, mate. Very well. Refreshed. Month to go. No worries. So the pod the other night with Ivan really sort of relaxes me in that I feel like we've got some ideas and structures. It's all now just about watching pre-season. I'm really excited for pre-season to sort of start over the next week or so and try to get an idea of what's going on. I can't help myself looking at the club pages, what's happening, what we're hearing. It's good.
Yeah,
it's
sounds
a good time.
It's a good time. It's a good fun time. We get to watch a lot of football, and there's a load of hot takes out there, and that's the fun part of it. Hopefully, we get a lot of different little bit of variety in drafts would be nice, but hopefully rewards those that do that little bit extra through preseason as well. So, we're going to talk mainly about defenders today, and sort of how the game has changed a little bit for defenders, how their output has changed over the last few years, and what does that mean when we're looking to pick, FPL assets at the back, and do we need to go big at the back, budget, and so, we're going to run through some data on, their physical output, as well as expected data. We're going to look at formations, how that impacts things, and maybe even have a look at just how, like, the last 10 game weeks in particular has impacted Trent, and that kind of leans into the formation side of things as well. But to start with, what I want to do is I just want to mention the Above Average FPL Mini League. So if you want to join us in our Mini League, our public Mini League, it is 1Feb93 is the code. That's 1Feb93. And make sure you are in, well, preferably prior to game week 1, but at least before the end of the first wildcard window, because that is when we will shut the window on entries to the league. So shout out again to Jamie Piggott, who won our league and the FPL 2 years ago, and Fintan O'Sullivan, who took it down last year. Can you win it this year? Well, you have to join and find out.
Got some big history now in terms of if you win it, you've had a pretty good season, so it gets competitive, and we want people to shout out. We want to find someone that was born on the 1st of Feb 93 in our league. That's what we want.
Yeah. And there's 1,500 people now in the league already. So, the more the merrier. Come and join us. It'll be a nice, fun, competitive league. But we're not here to talk about the mini league. We're here to talk about defenders. But more importantly, well, we get best get started with the teams. And guess asking the question, has the game changed? So on screen is a table which just shows the percentage change from 21-22 season to the 22-23 season, looking at key passes, big chances created, XA, and open play crosses for basically the 10 teams that we're going to be looking at the start of the season, plus or minus any like enablers, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's not easy picking 10 teams, on this. But with the way the game's set up, you really should be limited in the number of teams you look at. There's always going to be a talisman in those other teams. A talisman might come out of your West Hams, your Forests, your Palace, for example. But ultimately, there's a historic Big Six, which are really good to look at for stats because they can show you sort of trend year by year how things happen, and what's going on. Is there any real changes either in the team or just in the league as a general? Newcastle and Brighton very much feel like they're now part of that. And Villa and Brentford are coming off, really good seasons. Villa certainly, a team on the up. And yeah, I thought it was really good to just look at their data and what is it telling us? And I think, the key things is what you're seeing is teams are a lot more selective in their shots than they used to be. And are much more looking for quality in their chance creation than historically they've ever been. So Man City, Pep continues to be that man where they've dropped off huge amount of crosses because they basically don't play fullbacks anymore. They dropped off 125 crosses on the previous season, but managed to still gain nearly 20% on their big chance creation. They're looking to work the box into the right space. They're, as I said, XA's down, open play crosses down quite big. Their overall number of key passes is down relatively big. These things are all bad for the creators, the Kevin De Bruyne's. It's probably why the Mahrez and Grealish, didn't really get those heady heights. It's probably why a lot of us went with Haaland, and that's about it for the whole season from City, because it's all so focused to get those big chances. It all adds up to that. It makes it very, very easy to permacap Haaland over and over again, because all avenues go to one place. You've got someone. Go on.
Go on. No, I was just going to say, I think what's interesting here, and just for context, I mean, you're looking at the Newcastle, Arsenal, and Brighton in particular, looking at those big chance created improvements. Obviously, they're coming off of a season which has been excellent for them in comparison to the previous season. Newcastle obviously fighting relegation, Arsenal down in 7th, 8th place, and Brighton, sort of mid-table as always. But as they always have previously been, I should say. But yeah, Newcastle have had like 135% increase on that big chances. Only 34 big chances created in that 21-22 season, which just shows how poor they were. But they're starting to put up numbers now which are getting closer to the Liverpool and Man City. And Liverpool's an interesting one, because they've only increased 8 by 8.3, and you might look at that in isolation and think, well, that's not that great. However, they've created more big chances than any other team in this table, with 104 big chances.
The attack is still unbelievable. His crosses down, but still the most crosses in the league, 799. Key passes, 458. Like, still only City really around those numbers. Newcastle not far off, and Brighton actually up there. So yeah, they're kind of a bit more with the pack on those ones, but big chances, 104 big chances, they still fashion. They're still an elite attack all of last season. Arsenal were not, and now are really pushing on in those numbers. Still plenty to go. They still only created 73 big chances compared to, say, I said Liverpool 104. So I mean, they finished well. That's what that tells you, to get their goals that they did. And they've come from a position where that attack was not functioning. We talked a lot about the fact, if anyone that's watched this pod for a couple of years, we used to talk about that Arsenal's XG charts used to go up in tiny, tiny little steps. And then last season, we started noticing bigger gaps. This plays out, in 92% more big chance created. But it's not from just spamming crosses in. Crosses went up 6%. Total key passes went up 1.6%. This is about being much more selective, working the ball into the box, scoring goals. Erik ten Hag's done exactly the same. Erik ten Hag's number of crosses is unbelievable. Gone from 659 down to 516. Dropped out 140 crosses from that team. Yet everything else miles up. An extra 10 on their XA, an extra 18 big chances, an extra 70 key passes. So creativity went up, but it didn't go up through spamming crosses in. They're working the ball into good places. Probably makes a little reason why you want someone like Mount. You want someone that can play in those, inside positions and be involved in putting the ball through. They've been so reliant on Bruno to do that for them. Having another creator gives them another option to play them both. I don't think it's just one or the other.
I look at this and I think that that striker position, if they could fill that with a proper striker, they had 84 big chances last season. I imagine they will look to improve that / at least maintain that. That's the third highest of anyone in this table. And that's akin to like Spurs from the season before. And I don't want to talk about Kane because I don't think he's going to go. But just imagining Kane in that United side from an FPL point of view, it could be like it would be a significant challenge to Haaland, I would say, and that's a pretty bold statement.
But also, if it shows why they could just play Rashford up top, because
Yeah.
Weghorst really, they weren't crossing. Like, what's the point in having a big, tall target man if you're not going to cross to him? Don't need to.
Yeah.
Is they should look for the quicker, smaller profile. That's actually the man. The fox in the box type player for them is the stuff that they want. They just need goal scorers.
Agreed. Agreed. Let's pull this back to defenders. Let's pull this back to defenders and move on to crossing. And this is crosses from all defenders. And we mentioned, in the last table that lots of the teams, the crosses were generally down, but we can see clear here, and we can recognise it from last season when we look at Newcastle. Again, we expect these numbers in terms of volume, like everything attacking that Newcastle did went up. That's just a fact. 122% increase, up from 209 to 465 from defenders. And that is why Kieran Trippier just gets so many bonus points, because he's just overloading the box all the time with crosses. And it's just mad. And you can see Tottenham as well, up 73%. That's quite obviously because we had Perisic in there, who's a guy that loved to cross the ball. And then Porro towards the end of the season, lots of crosses coming in from him. Even Emerson, used to chuck him in as well. And we saw him midway through the last season as well, picking up some bonus points just for doing the BPS stuff, as it were.
Yeah.
But as you said already, you mentioned Ten Hag. Everything's kind of dropped in total crosses. Obviously, that's they're mainly attacking with their front and wide men now, and it doesn't surprise me the other teams like Chelsea and Villa and Brentford as well. I mean, with Reece James being injured and stuff like that, and Chilwell being injured for large periods, you didn't have that almost natural width. Cucurella never felt, he probably should have been, but you never felt he was always going to get to that byline and whip across in. Brentford, as you mentioned already, big chance monsters. So crosses lead to small chances, flick on headers and stuff like that go off target, or get knocked out for a corner, which is another cross, which creates another small chance. Yeah. Ironically, when Arsenal had one of the best set piece XGs last season, didn't they? Which was quite interesting.
That's the only time they wake up, and it kind of shows a little bit. Like, I see a lot of teams when the FPL launched, a lot of teams put Gabriel in over Zinchenko, and I was like, my nature says to me Zinchenko have the fullback, but Gabriel's the way, because their whole defence only makes 130 crosses. The chances of having any kind of goal involvement from him it's next to none.
Yeah.
Whereas Gabriel, hey, they've got loads of good set piece takers. I'd rather be the man that just stands in the box. The thing with centre backs always end up getting pass completion and all of those type of things. But fullbacks, one of the reasons why they were so good in the bonus is they were crossing all the time. You get a point every time you get a successful cross into the box. So you have to be selective here and understand that not all teams are the same. Some teams still use width. Newcastle, Liverpool have. We don't know if Liverpool will, because obviously as they move to tuck their fullbacks more inside, that means less crosses. So there's still loads, but we have to wait and see on those ones. Tottenham, I'm massively expecting that to regress. I think, is any team that plays free at the back, it relies on wing backs to attack. So Chelsea, historically, you can see under Tuchel, make loads of crosses, move away from Tuchel into more of a four at the back system, and you've already got built-in wide men, so you don't need to use them as crossing as much. Depending on, or certainly you don't need to use both of them. We might see one of them reaching into that attack.
Yeah.
And that tends to happen more when you've got four at the back teams, is one goes forward, one stays back. That's what we're really looking for in this. So Newcastle, hey, they made 465 crosses. Well, 398 of them were Trippier. So Trippier made 398, which means that only
67.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, yeah.
Yeah, but only Liverpool and Tottenham took more crosses than Trippier as a whole defence. And most of them, he got more than double than what their whole defence did. So
Mental.
We've all ruled out Kieran Trippier. But if they continue to do that in the same volume and he still plays every game,
I'm thinking about what they've done in the transfer market so far, and nothing tells me that that's going to change. Nothing tells me that's going to change at the moment.
Tonali might take some corners off him,
Yeah.
but he probably won't take any crosses off him. But that's a whole different world. So these are open play crosses. These are not crosses from corners and the likes. This is just outright crossing. So we're seeing it across the board. Analytics tells you this creates a lower volume of chance. You're just giving the ball away and potentially going to get countered. So Villa, Brentford, under Emery, you've seen it, massive regression in terms of number of crosses. Brighton never did a lot to start with. So although they're up 15%, that's not actually relative. Remember, their big chances were up 60%, key passes up 40%, wherever it was. Like 15% increase in crosses is not relative to how much their whole attack increased.
And their overall crosses are down as well. So yeah.
Nah, like crosses just don't happen from defenders anywhere near what they used to.
So should we move on to formations then and why that is? Because this is kind of leaning into why this is sort of happening. And we're going to look at a couple of formations here that have deep history in football. Looking at the 2-3-5, which is, I mean, you can explain this better than I can.
Yeah, so historically everyone played 2-3-5. If you go back 100 years, like teams would line up, you'd look at them on the program and they'd all be sitting 2-3-5, and that feels weird for us that that's how it was, but that was the most popular formation. One of the reasons why was you were only offside if like 3 men were behind the ball. That changed to 2, and then people changed up the formation a little bit, but this was the way that people attacked. They'd have 3 narrow people in the box, so almost like a centre forward. The inside forward was much more common a term, years ago. And then your wide, outside right, you used to hear outside left, those kind of names you would hear. But this has been going and flexed through the years. If you think of Liverpool in the 4-3-3 with Mane and Salah would be the inside right, inside left. Bobby would be central. Trent would be your right wing. Robbo would be your left wing. The 3 midfielders just stayed on the halfway line, and no one cared about them ever from an FPL perspective. And the 2 centre backs just came forward for corners. Other than that, they stayed at the back. That's how they played. Man City have been doing this on and off. They switched from what's called a box midfield, which we'll get to in a minute, to this 2-3-5, where he loves to use this, and Pep's always loved to use this against 3 at the back teams, where he would pin people in with that really wide left, really wide right, and then have 3 men in the centre, so that we're all taking up one of the centre backs. That would stop wing backs from getting forward. That would keep teams in and go toe to toe with 5v5. So your Gundo and your KDB outside.
Yeah,
Haaland, your Grealish. That's why Grealish played a lot more than, say, Foden, because he wants to stay out there. That's one of the reasons why some people think maybe Foden plays inside left. Could be, as Gundo. People think, well, he won't be an 8. Well, it's not really an 8, but he can play inside forward. And if they're dominating games, there's a chance. And if he does, I'll be all over it. But yeah, the way this got tackled over 100 years ago was when they changed the formation, was they changed to something called the WM. And this one, again, if I'm thinking Liverpool, is one that we saw Klopp switch to at the end of last season. So the WM is basically because the attacking bit looks like a W and the defensive bit looks like an M, effectively. Other ways you could call it is this box midfield, where you have 3 at the back, a whole square in the middle of effectively 2 6s and 2 8s in front of them. The 8s then, in attack go forward to become 10s. And then you've got 3 across the top. A little bit more narrow, would sort of counteract a little bit the overload by having those 4 in midfield. And Klopp used this. So as we know, Robbo became sort of almost like a left centre back. Trent came in and played that right 6. Now, you look at this and you think from an FPL perspective, why would we want a right six? There's 5 people in front of him. Like, surely we liked him more when he was a right winger. But Trent's a phenomenon. He has the if you give him 5 targets to pass to, and 2 of them are running through the channels and the other one's already playing over the top, well, he has the ability to create lots and lots of big chances and get through teams. So we're playing on a skill set with Trent rather than a position. That's why he's exciting there. Other teams, lots of teams are playing this in a different way. We saw Tuchel in this. Tuchel loved this system for Chelsea. So when you think about they were doing like nearly 500 crosses like a year ago, the outside wingers in this were actually the wing backs. So he'd play 3 straight central defenders, no movement needed there. He'd play 2 6s already, so no movement needed there. He'd play 2 8/10s. So your Mounts, your Ziyech's, for example, in front of them, a striker, and then the wing backs would overload and become that there. So why these are important is basically what we're saying is, unless you're Trent and you're playing at right 6, what we really want to do is try and find the nuggets in defence that somehow become the outsiders, or certainly somehow. So Ten Hag, for example, can attack with a 2-3-5. And sometimes what he'll use is the fullbacks to become those inside forwards for underlapping runs. Sheffield United did that a few seasons ago, where they'd use the centre backs to just overload and come through.
God, I remember that.
Yeah. So the point with us is, don't really look at formations when they line up on a team sheet. If you look at touch maps, if you check through stats, you should be able to identify where these teams are actually playing. And if you can find people that are still playing outside right, outside left, or even the underlappers, which is absolute gold for goals, there's still opportunity. Otherwise, you're requiring really good skills, which is the Trent discussion.
Well, we can talk about Trent directly here because we've got some touch maps that have come from Opta Analyst, and looking at the first half of the season, the first 30 game weeks essentially, where you can see that he's hugging that right touchline. You can see that he's wide, and you can see that he's taking more than like 65% of his touches on that right hand side, and very little time does he spend on the inside actually getting involved in the busy part of the play. And so in that area, he's not able to play that almost quarterback style, pinging passes left, right, and centre, which he has the ability to do. And obviously in these kind of positions, you were expecting him to do more of the, those deep crosses, those deep line crosses, that we've seen from him for so long. But what happens when they change that formation against Arsenal is that immediately everything moves more centrally. We move from, what was I saying there? So there's 63% in that corner, then changes to 27%. So that half his touches then become that wide place, and the rest of them, really just move inside. So he's just very much now more involved, which allows him to, he can still play that ball to the wide right. He can still play that. He can then ping that ball to the wide left. And then he has the option, as you mentioned, if he's going to be that in that right side at 6, he has the option of, which of those 3 strikers, or the forward and the inside forwards, or whatever we want to call them, where does he want to pass it to? And, he can put it on a sixpence. He can put it right where it needs to be, to create a chance. And, that will tick his bonus up, and Liverpool's quality up there is going to mean that, he's going to gain assist points and all sorts of stuff like that as well.
Yeah. What that shows is, is he is in this formation at right centre midfield, a right 6, as it were. It works for him. But Tonali, who Newcastle have signed, will probably also play right 6. And we're not scrambling to get him in our team. It kind of works for Trent because he still gets clean sheet, but if they get it, he still is playing to an elite attack. in terms of the number of goals scored, the number of big chances created. Yeah, he's good.
I
He's
think
good.
but what it also does, I mean, what Klopp's tried to do is he's tried to take advantage of his strengths and help him with his weaknesses almost. Because we go back to this WM, and they've still got 5 players in that back line. It just means they're not going to be countered as often, right? So he's going to find himself out of position less, and he can always slot directly back in, and whether it's Kanate or Van Dijk it's more likely to be Kanate, I guess. Can slot to the right hand side.
One.
Yeah, but he can slot to the right hand side and allow Trent to make a straight run back and create that 4 again. So it should play to his strengths and address his weakness, right? Which is a good thing.
It does. But Andy Robertson isn't really a left centre back, and if he wants to play Diaz, he's not really a left winger, and McAllister's not going to give you that width on the left-hand side. So there is a chance that teams could really overload on that side against them. And there is a chance that people could really target. If you were playing against them, what would you do? You'd stick a right winger right up high, and you'd look to ping it across it and say, right, Diaz ain't going to track you. McAllister's probably not going to track you. You're now going to get straight on up against Robbo. Fantastic, and then all it takes is all the others to come flying over, and now you're massively exposed. So still I'm not convinced it's the way. I think they've just got themselves an option, and I think they'll probably flex it back and forth a lot more, bringing in Szoboszlai who can play off the right. I don't 100% know, is that you need to play this. We don't know that formation that Klopp played last season wasn't just out of necessity.
Yeah, true.
And was only ever a short-term plan. We've got to watch it. And what I'll be looking at, and what we'll all be looking at, is does his touch maps in pre-season look like this, which is on the screen right now, which is the game week 30-38, or does it look like the first one? And if it looks like the first one, that's a different game.
Yeah. Cool. So that's the positional side. Let's have a look at how defenders have essentially performed in terms of output then, season by season. Because I think it's quite interesting to see, the discussion around how the team setup has changed. We see that's regressing underlying numbers in certain areas. How is that impacting essentially what we get for FPL points? And actually, it says the same thing. Obviously, it's nice that it correlates. So for those that are listening, between 2018 and 2021, those 3 seasons, there was defenders were getting between 120 and 135 goals, and between 190 and 230 assists. And then there was a bit of a spike in goals in the 21-22 season, up to 150 assists around the 220 mark. And then last season, 104 goals, which is lower than anything in the last 5 years, and only 174 assists across defenders. And I think that's very interesting when you look at, the correlation between centre-backs and full-backs as well. And again, it goes back to what you were talking about with crosses and with crosses creating small chances and leading to corners and things like that, where you traditionally see centre-backs coming up and getting involved, where that's not happening as much. And I don't think we've got like the corner stats, but maybe that's something that we should have a quick look at. But 92 goals from centre backs in 21-22, only 55 goals from centre backs last year. That's mad.
That's huge. It's a huge drop off from centre back. When you look at it, so Pedro Porro started 13 games for Tottenham. He finished as the joint highest scorer of all defenders last season with 3. Van Dijk got 3, Ben Mee got 3, Gabriel got 3. Pinnock got 3. So, that's and Christensen at Leeds got 3. I don't even remember Christensen playing, but he managed to get 3 goals apparently. Ben White, we say offers no attacking threat, got 2 goals, like
Yeah,
up there. it's 3 goals was the most anybody scored out of any defenders last season.
it's
Goals just
mad.
dried up a death for it, because if everyone attacks with a W, or everyone attacks with a front five, and everyone's looking to create bigger chances, those bigger chances don't go to defenders because they're in play chances. And if you're trying to work a bigger chance, if you bang a shot from 30 yards, it hits somebody and goes out for a corner, all the defense go up. Thanks very much. That's how it works. Yeah, if you're not, if you cross in, crosses get blocked all the time by defenders and they get headed out. Hey, you're not
Yeah,
crossing as much. So we don't get as many corners, defenders don't go up, blah, 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 blah. And we don't get as many assists. Everything in the style of play that is a create more big chances, don't waste opportunities, is not good for defender returns.
yeah,
As a general, that doesn't, however, mean there's not pockets, because there's plenty of defenders that scored, but we've got to look for it. So we've got to make sure is that we're doing the stuff of like clicking on how many corners are these teams getting every week, like paying
yeah.
attention to those kind of stats. How many crosses are these teams putting in every week? Yeah, where do their defenders end up on the touch maps? Those are the things that are really interesting for us. Using the likes of SofaScore, FootMob, all of those type of places that you can easily get it. Fantasy Football Scout, the maps are good. I'm not sure how good they are for pre-season, but certainly as the game goes on, they're really useful. But
Yeah,
keeping
I
as
did find
much
some
going on as possible.
stuff. I did find some
Yeah,
stuff on corners just very quickly, so it didn't drop off as much as I thought. So there's 3,953 corners taken in 21-22, and then 3,828 corners taken last year. However, the spread, like the spread of corners, so they're much more focused around the big teams 2 years ago. So this is why we were getting more goals. You got better centre backs, etc. And it's a lot more spread out last year across more
yeah,
teams. So that, like, the distribution of corners is very, very different, which is probably a reason why.
yeah, definitely. It used to be a guarantee that if you had a big six defender and they just played every game, you'd probably get 4 or 5 attacking returns, whoever they were, and they'd come in 120 points plus.
Yeah.
Doesn't happen anymore. Doesn't happen anymore. You've got to be selective and understand the roles they're playing. Otherwise, you won't end up with much.
So
And it's really
go on.
important, this, though, isn't it, as well? I was going to say, really important for this is because it's first wild card. Like, this makes a bigger difference if you really identify these players early. Get on the ones that you think have got the most opportunity early.
Yeah.
They're the ones that can explode.
And in terms of creative defenders, so whilst it's important to look at teams, it's also to, as you mentioned earlier, Trippier having more crosses on his own than, City, Tottenham, and United or something like that. It was mad. But
Yeah,
looking at creative defenders individually, Trent and Trippier in terms of big chances created per start are just so far ahead of everyone else. And you've got Robbo in there as well. So Trent is at 0.71 per start. Trippier 0.63, Robbo 0.38, Porro 0.31, but his minutes are, he's got like 1,100 minutes or something like that compared to like the 3,000 minutes the other boys had.
yeah. Trent and Trippier are next level. This is ranked by XA. So, you're talking like 0.34, 0.35 per game expected. And then you go down to Robbo and it's 0.21, Porro 0.20, and then it drops. It keeps dropping. We've got some on here, like Zinchenko, for example, we mentioned it earlier, but makes 1.4 crosses per game, and XA have 0.08 per game.
He's literally he's a 6'2" defender, isn't he?
He's a 6'2" defender. Potentially, doesn't do anything wrong, so potentially he does get bonus. But
Yeah.
the more better they are in attack, the more chance just attacking people are going to take those numbers.
Yeah. True.
And with Havertz probably instead of Xhaka, a guy that doesn't get booked every game and probably will score more goals, it's just another person that you feel could take it away from the 2-6 guys. You feel like you need to have somebody that's going to have some form of attacking return to be able to get it. It's why Ben White at 5.5 is like, nah, no, thank you very much. It's similar, 1.5 crosses a game. They don't do it. I mean, I've only just realised it looking at this table. Obviously, we've got no City players on this at all because they don't create.
Yeah.
Stones. Yeah. If we go Stones, we're going Stones because we think he might score. We're not going for him for what he's going to create. Interestingly, on Trent, just for reference, in that inside right position, he created 0.9 big chances created, and that was at 0.42 XA per game. Mad. So what, like a whole new level Trent was on that right side. It's a small sample size. Probably we're taking one bad game and we're talking differently. But he created less in terms of the volume. Key passes were down. His number of crosses dropped to like 6.7. Not huge numbers. Some of the big things that this does tell me when I look at this as teams cross less is getting defenders that take set pieces could be absolute gold. So I immediately ruled out Robbo at 6.5. But if he's still taking all the left side corners, that could be, it could still be fantastic because Szoboszlai, you never know, might take a few off Trent, or
he might just take him off Robbo as well. If you see, I mean,
he might take him off Robbo.
People talked about Salah being the man that won that fitness challenge. But I watched that whole Liverpool video. Nobody mentioned that they were split into two groups, and that second group, Szoboszlai was so far ahead of everyone. It was crazy. He's a fitness freak. Yeah. He's going to work hard.
We've got to pay attention to him. We've got to pay attention to what no Mount means at Chelsea, because James and Chilwell took plenty, and if they're starting, then that's big. That's huge, but we also want to know if they're going to cross in this new team.
It's not good for Porro. Maddison comes in and takes everything, so that's a big bad point for Porro, and we would just rely on him literally being that right hand man in that front five. Otherwise, you're not going to get anything from him.
If he's completely out of position on the right wing, you don't care. But if he's playing right centre mid or right, some form of orthodox right back and Maddison's taken all the corners, then no, thank you very much. They're still out there. I mean, Dalot and Shaw, just nothing. Shaw's figures are a little noisy because he played some games at centre-back.
Yeah.
So he's a hard read, Shaw, I think, on these ones. And again, similar though, we don't know what Mount come in. If Mount starts playing every game, does he start taking some of the corners? Because he used to quite often take the left side ones at Chelsea, but when Chilwell didn't play or wasn't out, he would sometimes go over and take those ones, and James would still take the right. Chelsea was such a hard read that on corners previously, they just seemed to change up who took them every week. So we don't know, but we need to keep an eye. Estupiñán's still just a weapon because they don't cross that much. So you're looking at him for goal threat more than anything else. And we do know Estupiñán, just his overall stuff's pretty good on the old baseline. So he's solid.
Cool. Should we move on to what's that done for just players in the game in terms of output, all positions, looking at basically the thresholds. So we've got a table here with 100 and 150 point thresholds last season, and the seasons before as well. So 21-22, 2021. And what it shows is that less defenders are getting over 100 points. Less defenders are getting over 150 points. But midfielders are going the other way. The tick along midfielders anyway, more of them are getting above 100 points. Averaging over 3 points a game is okay. It's not great, but what's interesting is actually the midfielders. It's the same number, so you're still getting that consistency. Very interesting. Not we're talking about forwards, but forwards has just dropped off a cliff.
We talked the other night with Ivan, didn't we, about the fact that elite forwards in this one. So if you look at the elite numbers, so the 150 plus, because they're the big guys. So forwards have gone from 14 to 7 to 5 over the last 3 years. Well, that's reflecting the prices that we go basically Kane and then 8 million.
Is it not also positionally as well? Was it like strikers have become midfielders, like Rashford, for example?
Yeah, they're
was
just
a striker
not there.
Became a midfielder.
Jota's sort of gone to a midfielder. Havertz is a midfielder. Is like they're moving out of these zones, but because they weren't achieving 150 points as a forward previously, that there's not that many out there that are just number 9s and banging in big numbers. They're not normally the primary weapon for the team. Your Watkins, your Kane, your Haaland, those guys are still there, still banging in huge numbers. But there's not that many of them, only 5.
Yeah. Back to defenders. I mean, like the only 3 last year were Trippier, White and Trent.
That's it. That's the only 150 plus people last year. So that tells you there's a little bit that says to me, well, big at the back is important because you can't muck about. Teams are scoring because they're creating more big chances. So clean sheets are just never a given. And attack's never a given. You've got to find the right people for it. So we've gone from 37 players used to get over 100 to 33 to 22 last season, 22 defenders in the whole league. And that's partly because like I say, the big 6. The big 6 used to be a guarantee that you get over 100 points. Man City didn't get there. I think the other day, Man City didn't have any in that 22.
No. And only 8 out of those 22, only 8 of those were sub 5 million. Are sub 5 million this year. Which means they wouldn't have been. Yeah.
I used to be a little thing in pre-season every season to go look for my 4.5 defenders. I basically used to scour. I used to go, right, who's got over 100 points and is still 4.5? And I used to think, if you used to get that, that's the one. That's a player that is really useful because they're going to be fine. They're going to tick along. So your Mings is, I remember doing it with Webster and Dunk and people like that, and used to think, perfect, I found my 4.5s. Does still make you think that Botman's probably, a really good asset at that price, but they're a rarity now. I was finding the gold. You've got to work harder than you've ever worked to get the good points out of defence. Otherwise, you might and playing 4 at the back as opposed to having a midfield 5 feels like a midfield 5 is just easy now. Like 57 midfielders got over 100 points. And 14 got over 150. So we said that. So there were, 22 outfield players got over 115 points. Well, 14 of them were in the middle. Get 5 midfielders. Thanks very much. I've seen drafts. I saw FML boys. Pal Walsh had, I think, 5 midfielders of 8.5 or above. Just gone the lot. Ode, Saka, Bruno, Rashford, Son. You're like, would you back any of those to get less than 150 points this season?
No, none of them.
Maybe it is the way.
But we're only looking for the first 8 game weeks.
Exactly. If you're playing a zombie team, it might be the way to go. If you're not, then it might not. But I intend on really looking for attack in those opening fixtures of where can I get that from. If that means to spend the extra money on Trent, fine. I do think, just looking at the numbers, looking at Trippier, I think game week 5 onwards for Newcastle looks absolutely fine. I think we'll all have Trippier on our team. So if you don't have Trent, getting the money to get to Trippier for game week 5 might be more difficult. So it could easily be that placeholder. I think Ivan mentioned that the other night. But then what happens if what happens if Trent's banging, you're not going
Yeah.
any off it. Well, if he bangs, then you've been taking the points for it. But yeah, be selective. Don't just listen when someone says, "Oh, they're going to play wing backs or they're going to play 4-3-3 or 4-2-3-1." What we want to try and find out is, can we get anyone in the front five or can we get anyone in the W? I mean,
W. Yeah.
because they're the teams that we want.
Apart from Trent, who can sit in the M, and we're happy.
Yeah, unless you're a magic man.
Yeah. Cool. That was great. That was a good chat, mate. Really enjoyed that. And for everyone listening, thank you for staying with us. If you do like our comment, if you do like our content, then make sure you hit a like on the video. If you want to see more of this, then make sure you hit subscribe and let us know down below what defenders you are thinking of going with this season for game week 1, and how long is your horizon? How long are you thinking of going with them for? Are you thinking game weeks 1 to 4, 1 to 8? You're going to be one of those guys that's going to go all the way to game week 18 without your wild card? Yeah, let us know in the comments. Give us some feedback if you want to see more of it. Anything else, mate?
Catch you soon, mate.
Take it easy.